Hey guys, Rambling Man here. Thanks for watching this video. I want to thank everybody for that. In this video we're going to talk about watches and how to spot them and how to go get them and how to make some money. That's what we want to do, is make some money. Buy low, sell high. Now, with that said, watches are getting harder to come by for me in the Panhandle, and maybe in the area you're in, you can still take advantage of some of this opportunity. So we're just going to go over a few things here. To start by letting you look at some of these watches. These are just some we've collected over the years. This is probably 10 years worth of collecting, and then we'll go from there. As you can see, there's some oldies here, some pocket watches, some stopwatches, some bigger watches. So I just want to show you what to look for and what to look out for that can happen to you, and it's going to save you a lot of heartache. So once again, thanks for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. We're going to do a giveaway when we reach that. So tell a friend and let's get up there to 100. So I guess what we'll start with is just watches in general. Preferably, the watches that are going to bring you a little bit of money is a watch that will wind up. And what I mean by that, it's not a battery watch. It's the old vintage, you know, our grandpas had them, our dads had them. Your mom may have wore like a lady's watch. Most of them wound up. You had to wind them. And so that's really what we're looking for, is watches that wind. Now there is some value in watches that take batteries, but there's some stuff behind that. It needs to be the right movement inside of the watch that will help retain its value. Some battery watches, you know, that's why they're $9.99 at some of these big stores, because they're not going to hold their value over time. Are they going to function? Yeah. You know, do you need one to wear for a year? Yeah. Is it worth repairing? No. But these old vintage watches like this one I'm holding, I believe this is a Ben Russ. You know, the winders wore out. Some of the plating, this is on brass, but it's like chrome plated or nickel plated. A lot of that's wore from just being worn, and it's all wore down. But that doesn't hurt the value, because watch collectors and these guys that repair watches, and there ain't a lot of them left, believe me, this is what they like to find, because this one still kind of runs. They can replace the crown, they can replace the crystal. I've even seen them go in there and replate these cases and make them look like new again. And with that said, reason I mention that, don't try to clean these and make them look pretty if your intention is to sell them, because that's what the end person wants to do. They don't mind it being a little dirty, as long as they can tell what it is and what they're buying. That's the stuff they like to do. They want to clean it, take it apart and restore it and put it all back and make it look all shiny and new. So, you know, making something nice and pretty isn't going to make it sell better. Leaving it alone is what's going to make it sell. So these are the way I picked them up. I haven't tried to make it look better or anything like that. Now, I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but you know, this crown is smooth. You can barely wind it. So be on the lookout for watches that wind up. Now, one tip. I have bought watches where the person selling the watch said to me, "Oh, it isn't running, it needs a battery." I picked it up, looked at it with my loupe, and I'll show you something here in a minute what to look for, and I immediately seen it was an automatic watch. What does that mean? Self-winding or automatic is still a watch that you wind up, but it has an offset counterbalance in the back, so as you move, it keeps itself wound up. You could just wind the watch all the way normally and it'll run all day, but the counterweight in there keeps it wound. Well, more about that later. So I looked at it and seen it was an automatic watch. And usually you can just give it a little shake like that, and you'll see the second hand start moving. Now you don't want to reveal that to the seller because they think it needs a battery. What you've just discovered is the watch is running, it's an automatic, and that adds more value than just a wind-up watch in most cases. So as you can see, I shook that one just a little bit like that. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you can see the second hand moving. We'll give it a minute. Maybe you can pick that up, maybe not. So that's a little bit of a buy-in tip there. You don't want to reveal, if the seller doesn't know what the watch is, and you do, you don't want to reveal that. You want to keep a poker face and use that to your advantage. Now this bend rust I just showed you, this is why I want you to use the loop, and I'm going to show you a little flashcard here real quick. Because I don't know if we could do this with the loop. When you do to use a loop or a magnifying glass, or you might have vision that you don't need that, but at my age I have to use the loop, because what that's going to allow me to do is right in this area, we'll usually say how many joules, and I'll show you more on that in just a minute. It'll say how many joules, and it'll usually say automatic or self-winding, something to that effect. But down here is the important part. Right below the 6, in very small letters right here, is going to reveal where the movement is made. Now you might see Japan, which is collectible, believe it or not. You might see USA or something like that, or made in America. But on a good day, you want to see this, Swiss made. And the reason for that is a Swiss made movement inside of here is of some of the highest standards. They are they're the Elvis of watches. You know, the German watches are good. I'm not putting German watches down. And believe it or not, these Seikos that are Japan-made Seikos is one of the hottest collectible markets right now, is vintage Seiko watches. And when I say vintage, I mean from the 50s, 60s, 70s. There's a big market for that. This particular Benrus, which should be Swiss, actually says Japan in the bottom. And then this little guy, which I can't remember what this was, Timex. Yeah, this is an old vintage Timex. Now, a lot of these were made in the USA. Later, Timex did start farming out some of their movements. I've seen Timexes with, you know, made in Philippines, made in different countries like that because of mass production. But some of the old USA Timexes, there's a good market for those. And a lot of those will just be wind up. Some of them will be automatic. Either ones are worth picking up. I generally try not to pay over $10 for a watch. I would say go as high as 20. That would be okay. But try not to spend more than $10 or $20 because you know, you're in the $70 to $100 range on a used watch, depending on what it is and all that. And something else I wanted to touch on when we talk about jewels. Jewels isn't, you know, rubies, diamonds, and sapphires inside the watch. There's not 23 little jewels in there. The jewel is just a bearing. I think some of the old watches was actually a ruby jewel machined out to use as a bearing. Most of the watches, even the vintage ones now, they develop the synthetic ruby. It's just a bearing. Because some of the old watches and some of the old clocks, and I'll show you an example here, this shaft or this gear, where it spun was just metal against metal. And that would work for a while with a little bit of oil. But they soon realized, you know, it would start wearing out. And so they come up with this jewel for it to less friction. So it's metal against glass or metal against a hard surface. And that helps the longevity. And that's why it's important, the more jewels in a movement, the more time is involved in assembling that watch and up in the value. There are some watches in today's market that have as many. I've seen some YouTube videos. I believe there was, 30 plus jewels in some of these new high-end watches, which is a little bit out of my range. I'm going to be honest here. I do not own a Rolex. And that's some of the reasoning behind a Rolex. It's the quality of the movement inside of the watch, which is a Swiss movement. I have a knockoff Rolex, which I'll show you, which looks similar to this. My dad bought this from a gentleman. I think he paid $100 for it, not knowing. And he knew better. So I went over to look at it, and as soon as I picked it up, I knew it wasn't real. And the reason is, a real Rolex, you can't find nothing wrong with it. You can put the loop to it, you can put it under magnification, and you will not find anything wrong. Everything should be lined up, the letters should be perfect. You're not going to find a mistake in a Rolex, and that justifies the value of a Rolex. Yes, there's some $1,200 knockoffs that does stump some jewelers, but good watch people know what to look for. This particular Rolex was taken to a jeweler. He wasn't that, he admitted he wasn't that good at watches. He did not take the back off. He just kind of commented it kind of looks like one, but it ended up not being. It's a lot of sloppiness in that watch. Let's just jump to this real quick, and then I'm going to move on to some other stuff. This is probably my most expensive watch that my wife got me. Once again, this is a Swiss-made watch. It's a Tissot stainless steel. If you look at this real close, you will not find any visual mistakes. And you can also tell, it's hard on camera, but once you pick up a few of these watches, you're going to know instantly quality compared to just the look without the value, without the workmanship put in. So let's talk about something else real quick, because I want to wrap this up. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers. We're going to do a giveaway. Tell a friend. When we talked earlier about these jewels, as you can see in there, there's some little divots. I'm sorry I don't have my pointer, but there's some little divots in there where you would apply oil. It's a little sunken in spot, and that's where something's moving, a shaft or a bearing. And so that's where you would oil or service the watch. No jewels in there. So that same movement later, they would have came along and added the jewels. I don't know if you're going to be able to see them in here, but this particular little pocket watch has 17 jewels. I'm gonna move it around, and maybe you can see the pinkish, purplish color, and that would be a bearing, a synthetic ruby bearing, where something is moving, and it would still get oiled with watch oil. Hopefully the camera's going to pick this up. And that's what they mean by jewels. So yeah, in essence, the more jewels, the higher value of the movement. Should be a better quality watch. And this particular one, I don't remember what this one is. This is an older pocket watch. Let's have a quick look at it real quick. I believe I dropped my loop. Nope, it's right here. Sorry. Let's just have a quick peek. This is a Hamilton. So this is an American-made Hamilton, made in the great old USA. This is a nice old watch. This watch probably has a retail value. It's been monogrammed, so that hurts it a little teeny bit. This is probably a lady's pocket watch. This probably has a retail value of somewhere close to $200. Let me show you another one here real quick. Now this was an incentive back in the day to gas your car up with gasoline. Again, it's a wind-up watch. You can see through the front. Looks a little yellow. You can see through the back. It's called a skeletonized watch. But the reason this was done, This crystal isn't discolored. It's purposely made that tint to look like car engine oil, which there's no car engine oil in here. So it's from the Shell Oil Company. So if you filled up so many times, you could get this pocket watch back in the day. I don't have the correct fob, which is also valuable, sometimes more than the watch itself, or watch fobs. With the fob, this watch is worth about $600. Without the fob, this is about a $400 watch. But as you probably ain't gonna be able to read this, but on the back, this is a Swiss-made movement for the Shell Oil Company. You may see the word Shell imprinted in there for them. So this is a nice little watch, and it's just meant to look like oil in there. Don't pass these by either. Some of these old pocket watches, or excuse me, stopwatches, were Swiss made. So if you can pick these up for under $20, pick them up, and you can. There's money to be made here because they're Swiss made. Now watch. Let me check this one real quick. I believe this is one you want to avoid. This is what you're going to see most common out there today. This is a $19.99 watch at most stores. It's just a battery watch. You know, they're nice for a gift, but it's nothing you're going to pass down to your grandkid because it's just made, you know, for a quick sell. And the motor inside of here, I believe it's a Mickey Yodo motor. You know, it'll run, but there's no value here. So, you know, watch out for these unless you just like the looks of them. But this Mickey Yodo motor, they put this motor in all kinds of watches. They can put it in a watch this big, down to a watch this big. Same motor. I've taken watches apart, Mickey Yodo, and stuff I wouldn't even have believed it was in there. So be careful with that. I think that should just about wrap it. Oh, one last thing. These little guys here, I'm sorry I don't have more to show you. I do have more. Just brought this one out. These are little wind-up ladies' watches. There was a period about 10 years ago where people were taking the movement out of these. Some of these were 17, 23 jewel movements. That small. Look how small that is. And they were taking the movement out and selling it for steampunk. They would take the movement, set it in a ring, so you could see all the gears, and they thought that was cool. They basically destroyed a lot of these watches doing that. You couldn't sell this watch for what it was. They only wanted the guts. I refused to do it. We kept them, and I'm so glad we did because these are starting to make a comeback. So be on the lookout for these. Some of these will be gold cases. Some of them will be gold filled. The majority of them are gold filled. You will find occasionally a gold one, but these are super nice, so be on the lookout for those. And here's another little example. I got this in a box for $1. They didn't know what it was. I put my loop to it. This is a Tissot, Swiss made. This is an awesome little ladies watch. This is probably worth $40, $50. All I gotta do is throw a band on it. And so just watch for that. Get the loop. Get you a loop or a magnifying glass. You have to be able to do that to see down here below the 6 o'clock where these things are made. They will fool you. One last example I'm going to show you.
You and Mickey are going crazy.
Yeah, it happens a lot. This happens a lot. Let me find one. I'm going to find the best one I can find for you right here. Okay, here's, now this is the real deal. This is a chronograph, which all that means, this is a watch, but it's also a stopwatch. So it's two things. And it's all in one, so they call it a chronometer. You just have a start, stop, reset. The rest of it's just a normal watch. But if you can see those extra little dials in there, on a real chronometer, when you got your loop and you look in there, those hands will actually move. Now on some of these $9 watches, it'll look just like this, but those little hands will just be glued in place for the look. So really be careful with that. So that's something commonly done. If you don't loop it, you're not even going to know it. You'll never see them hands move. They're just glued there. Here's another real chronometer. This is my wife's. I picked this up for her because the case, she's sensitive to some metals like stainless steel and things like that. So I picked this watch up because it's sterling silver, the case is, and it allows her to wear it, and it doesn't affect her. But it's also a chronometer, chronograph, and those little teeny hands, those extra little hands, they actually work and keep time. So be on the lookout for that. Now something else happened, and we're going to wrap this up. When I got into watches, I remember my grandpa collecting. In fact, this was my grandpa's right here. This Illinois watch. It's called a Bun Special, made in USA by the Illinois Watch Company. So I'm partial to this one. It needs a new crystal, which ain't a big deal. And a lot of these got put in different cases, and that's not a big deal. But last thing I want to talk about is when I learned about watches, they were small like these. This was a gentleman's watch. The only watches bigger was some of the diving watches were bigger. Well, then when I got into collecting watches and flipping watches,
That one.
these bigger ones were the in thing. In fact, I think this was my first big one right here. It was more of a fashion thing. But I mean, look at this thing compared to the 60s. That's what's going on. Now this is still kind of trending, these great big watches. But that don't really mean anything other than just the fashion. Because some of the companies refused to go big.
Show them the other one.
Rolex being one of them. Rolex refused to jump in on the trend and make their watch any different size than it's been since they started.
That one weighs.
Now this is a quartz battery watch, but it does have a Swiss battery movement. This is a diving type watch. It's not a authentic diving watch, but this thing is massively huge. You know, you don't want to go to the doctor for weigh-in on doctor day and be wearing this thing, or he's going to yell at you, tell you go on a diet. But this thing's ridiculously huge. But
They also make a lot of tungsten,
yeah, I'll show them that real quick.
and then they better.
But what I'm saying is don't go out just looking for big watches. That's more just a trend or a fashion thing.
Well, that's fun too.
It's fun to do. My wife got me this one here. This is a very nice everyday wear watch, but it's made out of tungsten steel, so it's got some weight to it. But tungsten will not scratch, whereas stainless steel, it will scratch, and you can get it repolished and everything. But tungsten, I won't never have to repolish this because
It's got a goldstone face.
yeah, genuine goldstone.
Face. Yeah.
But now this has a Swiss automatic movement inside, and that's the value in this watch. Not so much the tungsten, that helps, but the real value is the movement being Swiss made. Now some of these Invicta watches that you see on television, if they've got Swiss movements in them, preferably the manual automatics.
Do we have any of those?
I don't believe I have an Invicta.
We got Swiss Legends.
Yeah, most of these you're seeing is a company called Swiss Legend
Yeah.
that was doing the Swiss movements. I believe, was that one an Invicta?
No.
Yeah,
It is?
yeah, this was my only Invicta right here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the rest of these are Swiss Legend. Now here's a German made watch. This is a company called Rotary.
That's a pretty watch.
Yeah. And if you'll notice the hands that are got a blue finish on them, which is something to look for. But if you'll look on the back, now not all of them have a see-through back, but you can kind of see the little
Automatic.
counterweight in there that makes it wind itself as you move.
Right.
And that's what they mean when they say automatic watch. It just self-winds as you wear it, or you can wind it with the winding
Or
still.
you can put it in those boxes you have.
Yep, they have some
Boxes.
plug-in or battery-powered winding jewelry boxes that if I don't want to wind this every day, I put it in that at night, and it turns different ways depending on what the manufacturer recommends. So when I wake up in the morning, it'll be fully wound. because it just kept it moving all night. But this is a nice German-made movement in here called rotary.
That one's German too, isn't it?
Which one?
The very first one I got you with the blue and white. The blue and white hands.
I believe so.
Yeah, you've wore that watch a lot.
Let me look at this one real quick.
You can tell by the band.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites.
Yeah, Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling.
Sterling.
Yep. So now I've wore this one a lot.
That's a pretty watch.
This is a pretty watch. Now I'll show you on the back again about the automatic part. You'll see that little weight moving. That's what makes it automatic.
Yeah, it's cool.
So when you don't have to wind these when you're looking at them to see the second hand move. I've picked these up before just to, once I see they're automatic, I just give them a little shake like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for that second hand to move a little bit. And I say, okay, we're good to go. And like I said before, the person selling it thought it needed a battery. Or, and this is also true, was too young to know that watches used to wind up like this. And that's what you want to look for, folks. Watches that wind up. Regardless if they're automatic or not, just look for watches that wind up. And if they take a battery and they say quartz, make sure it's Swiss. And one last thing, Seiko, which is Japan, I believe, that is a Japan-made watch. They just come out with a watch called the Grand Master, and it's been to Geneva. Seikos are highly collectible, especially the vintage ones. And the difference between a Grand Master Seiko, which is around a $7,000 to $10,000 watch, or a Rolex, is you cannot hear a Seiko tick because of the patent on the movement and the regulator, whereas a Rolex under amplification can be heard ticking because of the regulation and the way the escapement is designed. So don't scoff at Seiko. I passed up a lot of Seikos when I first started doing this because I wanted to do strictly made in America or Swiss. And I could have picked up some vintage Seikos, which today used, you know, watches like this that were Seikos are selling for around $100, $200 vintage, because there's a huge collectible market for them. So don't make the mistake I made. Watch for Seikos. And for that, please subscribe to our channel. We're trying to get to 100. We're going to get to 100. Go check on somebody. Tell them hi and tell them you love them. And that goes a long ways. So till the next video, this is Ramblin' Man. Peace out.